start with David Berkowitz. Who was David Berkowitz? Well, apart from being he was young when he became famous anyway, a young Jewish New Yorker. He was better known first as the 44 caliber killer, which isn't particularly catchy, and then he became known as the Son of Sam. And there is a film called The Son of Sam, which takes so many liberties. I mean, it's basically about the Son of Sam, but it also goes off into all kinds of tangential stories about the 1960s and hippie culture and all that. But David Berkowitz is credited as being the Son of Sam, and he brought New York to a standstill. He terrified the city of New York. That's not easy to do. New York has always been a tough place. And he was 22, 23. And what he was doing was going around at night with this gun, a 44 caliber gun. And he was finding attractive young couples that were in cars, right, making out. And he was walking up to the car and just bang, just ruthlessly shooting them and killing them. There were a few survivors, and even they were heavily wounded. One guy he survived it, but he was more or less blind for the rest of his life. Really good-looking young guy, and he was with his girlfriend. Imagine the trauma of that. You're in a car, and just some guy starts shooting through the window. So people were terrified, and for a long time they thought he was only doing it to girls with brown hair. And then that turned out to be false. The last victim had blonde hair, and she actually said to her mother before she went out, "I'll be all right, Mum, I've got blonde hair." And she was wrong, and she got shot and killed, and that's tragic. And that was David Berkowitz, the Son of Sam. The reason he was known as the Son of Sam is because he wrote several letters with satanic orientations that claimed that basically the dog next door was barking all night, and the dog was called Sam, and the dog, through the barking, was giving him orders, messages from the devil. You have to go and kill people. Go and kill people. That's what the dog was barking at him all night. And so he was going out and doing it. And that's what he said when he got arrested. But after he'd been in prison for a period of time, and it became clear to him that he was never getting out, he had a religious conversion from Satanism to Christianity. And then he did, the only other interview he's only done 2 that I'm aware of. Certainly in this one that I'm referring to was the second one he'd ever done, and he's very believable, and he says it wasn't just me. I am responsible. I did take part. I was there in most cases, but it wasn't just me. I was a member of a cult called the Process. The Process, we would say in England, the Process, and this is bona fide. This is demonstrated. Multiple criminal investigations into the Process for murder. It's well documented that they're involved in all kinds of crime. They went to the places that David Berkowitz said that they had ceremonies and they did animal sacrifices. The police actually confirmed that they found evidence of animal sacrificing. And he said, "I just made that story up as a cover because I was a soldier of the devil. And just like a Christian would be, a Christian martyr, there are apparently satanic martyrs as well, and he was going to go to prison for the rest of his life in service of Satan because he was completely brainwashed by these people." And you might say, well, that's an excuse. Well, no, because he knew he was never getting out of prison, even if, they did find other people. He's already pleaded guilty, and he's saying he's guilty of the crimes, not denying that. He's not trying to get out of jail, and he won't. He's just saying, I wasn't on my own. And the police reports and the eyewitnesses backed that up. At the time, the investigators knew they weren't looking for one person. And all the eyewitness descriptions are completely different. David Berkowitz is a short, stocky guy with brown hair. And the last eyewitness description was a tall, blonde guy. And they suppressed that description after they caught David Berkowitz, because the same reason as they do with the assassinations. We've got one guy, right? He's calling himself the son of Sam. He's crazy. He's locked up, and that's it. End of story. It's not that we're completely incompetent and we can't be bothered going out to investigate this cult, or because this cult is actually very powerful and has powerful members, and that's where they get their funding from and all that. We've got one guy and he's in prison. So I think David Berkowitz was a member of a cult, as he claimed to be. When you watch him talk about it, he's very, very convincing. Then we've got Richard Ramirez. Now these are all major. These guys are all major. In terms of their fame, most of them have got films about them. They've all got several documentaries about them. And Richard Ramirez was born in Texas, and he was known. He had a few names, but eventually he became known as the Nightstalker. And this guy paralysed LA, paralysed Los Angeles, again, monster of a city, massive city. Everyone was terrified. And the way the story's told in most documentaries, he was just a really nice kid from Texas, Palo Alto, I think, in Texas. And I could be wrong with that, but it's definitely Texas. And he was a really nice kid. And I've seen interviews with his childhood friends, his school friends, saying he was lovely, really funny, really nice, really sweet kid. And he looks like a sweet kid. He looks a really nice guy. He looks humorous, jolly. But then when he got older, there was a definite change. That was seen when he got caught. But the crimes were incredibly brutal. And they were home invasions. So he was going in and killing people. But during the period of time in which he was apparently doing these things, or allegedly doing these things, the police were investigating these crimes, and they were looking, obviously. These are home invasions in LA, extreme violence, and saying this is not the same person. It's not the same MO, modus operandi, obviously, mode of operations, whatever you want. You know, this is what we look for, a signature with a serial killer. To say this is the same person. He's taking a memento, or you know, he likes to do this, or he's oriented towards the kill. That's what he's all about. He just wants to kill. He likes the killing part, or the killing part is just a way for him to then do what he likes to do, you know, because he's oriented around his own mythology, or things he likes to do to dead people, you know. So they were absolutely convinced, the investigators, that there were different criminals. And then suddenly, I mean, the media, you'll notice in most of these cases, they get involved and they give a name. And once you've got one name, you've got one person. If it's the Nightstalker, you put an S on the end, it's the Nightstalkers. But no, it's the Nightstalker. So the media decided basically that it's one guy. So the police start looking for one guy, and they, you know, eventually zero in on Richard Ramirez, who's a tall, skinny. He looked like he was on drugs to me in the pictures that I've seen. But he was a tall, skinny example of a man. He didn't look physically capable of the brutality that he actually apparently did. He looked capable of squeezing the trigger and blowing your face off, but not of the physicality that he was supposed to have used to kill people. And eventually he was seen in a shop. His face was in all the papers. He was seen in a shop. He was chased through the streets. He ran for 2 miles. Eventually got tackled. He was hit over the head by one of the neighbours with a post, a garden post. That broke his head open. And then somebody rugby tackled him in whatever way. And he just gave up. He sat on the floor then, and he was caught. And the people on the scene said even though he was tired and all that, he did look evil. And if you look at pictures of him in the court cases and the trials, he could certainly pull the face of an evil man. Now, what I will mention, his uncle had been in Vietnam and done a lot of killing and raping, and you know, he had photos of the worst things you can imagine that he'd actually done and taken photographs of, and some video, I think, as well. And he showed all this material to Richard Ramirez when he was a kid, and that apparently changed him. That mixed with all the drugs, that kind of, teenage drug culture, that changed him. But yeah, the fact that all the MOs were different would indicate to me different people were committing the crimes. And the fact that he was fully adorned with all kinds of satanic symbology um, would indicate to me that he was part of a cult. I mean, are you going to do that on your own? Just get up and start drawing satanic symbols on your hands and all that, and just be like a one-man band in Satan's army? I don't know. I think you're more likely to belong to something. Somebody, have some kind of high priest or somebody else that recognises that you are a soldier of Satan. Otherwise, it's just you going in a shop, buying makeup and drawing little symbols on your hands. So I think he was more likely to be a member of a cult. There's a lot of cults. The Manson family was a cult that killed people in the 60s. I don't know why people think it's such a crazy idea that he wasn't working alone. And then you see the images of him up in the, as I say, in court, and the symbols. I reckon he was part of a cult and they were out there doing these murders. That's only what I think.